Abuja mama mo akwa manfam na ke black media. Abuja sisi a me ne okasai se wo kopiem e Parliament House wa abusia enye easy ne ekọ ho no ene enyan menteme nwase ne bajabaja ye bi a ekoso we eye quick update and a debate kese pa ekoso nti ye nam so e de sa update we sei ebrew abusia tiawa galamse won sensem ya ejentra ha na ne obi asori a na otintesu kokko egu na ado danko akufo ado ene eye NPP eye amamu bone a omususu se ekoso no eno ene nsem akwa akopiem e wo mrehye bedwafie na abusia eno na Speaker of Parliament atena se ene na ne mrehye bedwafo yi NPP fo ne NDC fo ene majority ne minority fo e de asi ani e wo honom na NDC fo mo ye minority fo kasa no mo se omo ntiase se NPP fo ejina simpi bi aso omo se Ghana fo nyina moa nyentu galamsi ase wa abra omo emra na ye John Dramani Mahama ewo power emfie bi a etwem na ne ye dum so baaye ene NPP fo ye hunu omo ye azumi se ye John Dramani Mahama ne kwa akosomo no akodundum ye machines ye wo ho no munyina na ade na momo pen so ye galamsey modi ase ye nsuo ne ye nsase ne ye nkoko na ne ye ka mo se dabi muhia ye moa ya moa mo ne moa mo kina na emum ye hwem se kwan ya mo befa so mo betu galamsey na ase no ye ma mo mleti awa bi na mo ntu ase a na mo behunu ye ne ebesi bim eno na ne omo kan na NDC ni ba kon so sorry ye se menim sasa sei ensuo sei anka nadmufo e wo so mo bem enso NPP fo ne ekoso no nadmufo so mu ni mu ho hwe eno e de ensem a eda ho abusia eno na NDC ni foforo so sorry ye no se a brana champion a wo ye minister for eye agric enso e ba begina simpie su bia wo se omo che eye akuafo felezes enso mempatemu oba sirimu ho no ma akuafo more than 4,000 to 5,000 feleza ye de ma wo mu ye 20 bucks ene ne ye ba ne se wo se ye de konkoto so ne ye twa te se ne ye twa asikyire eno edan kyan so a Brand champion say Ghana ban na do danko akufo ado chekuyani bia ye titi sika no 30 million 3,000 Ghana cedis no na brand champion tu ni sa kom eno se there be one kasa otun a ye yiwa bone galamse won sa ase no nadmofo ya we omunimu pa eno dan chanso so me nyina ba bia nka ye se ye cha ye Ghana fo akuafo ye 3,000 Ghana cedis nemum ne me kan se ye che wo mu 1,000 Ghana cedis so kuyani bia no Ghana ban ma no tete sika ne 10 million afen so no omo register ene ye mo fa lezes enye omo register enti se ye che fertilizers na se fertilizers na ye che no ye nipa no en register ye besimu dai ene wanya bi ene ne abusia behwe enye easy we to money we na we to money we Speaker of Parliament to na order in my command abusia come when ni nkotie galam se won sense ma ye koso Parliament MSC here.
Mr. Speaker, and therefore we cannot take politics out of it. Mr. Speaker, what is lacking is the fact that people do not want to take responsibility. Leadership has failed. And therefore, leadership must take responsibility for what is going on. We don't need to unite. I don't see where the unity comes in. It is about seeing empirical evidence that people are cutting down cocoa trees. And therefore, we don't need to unite to get the soldiers, the police, to arrest those who are doing that. Mr. Speaker, we have leadership. And because leadership has failed, that is where we have gotten to where we are. So, Mr. Speaker, the issue about we coming together has no place in this. We have laws that govern exploitation of minerals in this country. The laws are not being adhered to. Who is responsible? Let us hold them responsible and stop being hypocritical about this. When it shoots, we say yes, we unite. Today we have, an appointee has taken a decision to share 3,000 to farmers. Did we unite? How did we get there? A decision has been taken. The responsibility must be taken by leadership. When leadership fails, let us accept responsibility. That is the way to go. I see this all as just a gimmick. People are just involved, and they cannot look in the faces of their colleagues who are involved to stop them, and that's what is happening. On that note, Mr. Speaker, that issue about let us come together, I don't see how it is going to solve the problem. Let us take responsibility as leaders. Otherwise, let us get away from whichever office that we are occupying now and get people who are responsible and competent to take charge of these institutions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No.
Minority Chief Whip.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. When my colleague was making the point for the call for our colleague, the Minister of Agri, to come clearer, one of the main points he made was to apprise the House on the methods used to procure the items, i.e., how were the suppliers selected? What is how much we are spending on this? How did they determine the amount of money to be given to each farmer? Is there data? The tax waiver, yes. Also on the how the importers got tax waivers for importing the rice and other things. And Mr. Speaker, they talk about drought in the north, and we colleagues from the north are saying that which part of the north are you talking about? And how were you able to determine how much loss they are going to incur in terms of the grains and other things? So the Minister of Agri cannot just because the speed at which the comment came and then the procurement, it's as if the procurement for the grains was almost effected before they talk about how many people are affected. Mr. Speaker, those are the things that our colleagues talked about when they were talking about this. So maybe let the leader take note of this and make the Minister of Agri. And then, Mr. Speaker, lastly, what Honorable Member for Senate spoke about. Mr. Speaker, it is widespread information that the Minister of Agri gave fertilizers to members of Parliament to distribute. Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, the letter the minister wrote to me, copied the Agri Minister, said the MPs should assist the DC in selection of 100 farmers. Yes, that's the letter I read, Mr. Speaker. And I said, we have 32,000 farmers in Adaklo. I have no method of selecting 100 out of them. So, Mr. Speaker, when they finished the distribution, an electoral area in Adaklo got 22 bags of fertilizer. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, do you know what they are doing? They open the fertilizer bags like rice and put a cap on it and are distributing. Because the whole electoral area of 5 towns have got 22 bags of fertilizer. So do you really mean to help farmers, or is just cosmetic, or you just want to muddy the waters? Because 22 bags of fertilizer cannot be shared to over 4,000 people. How are you expecting them to share that? So, Mr. Speaker, the minister, our colleague is here. Let him explain his intention of writing that letter and how effective that exercise is supposed to be.
Yes, Honorable Helen Tosso.
We've had, it's been up.
Sorry, who has been up?
Mr. Speaker, with respect, Honorable Brian Achampon.
Oh, I'll get.
Mr. Speaker, because of the.
Yes, you are right. You are right. I've taken notice of you now. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I would like to know from the Minister for Agri, when we talk about drought in this country, it means that he's talking about the northern part of the country. Drought is a disaster. May I know from the minister, because when it comes to disasters, I know that it is NADMO that is responsible, is the lead agency to be in charge of drought, which is a national disaster. Did the Ministry of Agri work with the National Disaster Management Organization? Because when it comes to disaster and giving out monies or relief, they've got to have the data, households. You cannot just say you were giving an individual 3,000 Ghana cedis. You've got to look at the household, because some of the households is 3 people in the household, 5 people. For international standard is 5. So how did they come about with the data that they are going to use to distribute this money? And if you're talking about drought, the vegetation in the northern region is not different from the vegetation in OT region. So if they are saying that there was drought in the northern region, are they saying that they didn't see anything like that happen in the OT region? So I think that the data that they have, Mr. Speaker, it is not the true data that the Ministry of Agriculture or the Ministry of Agric is having. They have to consult the MPs in the various constituencies to work with them and to work with NADMO so that they can have the credible data for this distribution of monies that they want to undertake. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
May we hear from the minister, since he's around, the Minister for Food and Agric, then we can continue with the comments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. I do acknowledge that this is a business statement, and so I will be very brief, just to clear some misconceptions and confusion. Starting with my respected Honorable, we have not declared a national disaster or a drought. What we mentioned was that it is a dry spell. A dry spell. And a dry spell is totally different from a drought condition, which would have necessitated the declaration of a national disaster. A dry spell, a near drought condition is not a drought. It's not a declaration of a state of emergency. Please, it is very, very important. We have not declared a drought. We said a dry spell. A dry spell. You can play back my statement. You can play back all my press conferences. It was a dry spell. Number two, we have not said anywhere that we are giving 3,000 cedis to any farmer. We have not said anywhere. My press conferences from the beginning, I mentioned that we're going to give 1,000 Ghana cedis per farmer. Number three, Mr. Speaker, we have delivered fertilizers under different programs. The first one was the grant fertilizers, which we gave to every farmer that is registered on the Ghana Agriculture and Agribusiness platform. We gave them grant fertilizers. We also gave members of parliament fertilizers to be given to the very vulnerable farmers that you will identify. So if you have a copy of the letter, that I gave to you, and every member of parliament has a copy of that letter, if you read the letter, it is clear that if you can identify very vulnerable farmers in your constituency, we are allocating these fertilizers to you to give to these very vulnerable farmers, up to 100 of them. That was stated in the letter, and we requested that if you identify these vulnerable farmers, make sure that they are registered on the GAP, give them the fertilizers, and then give us a list of those farmers. So we did not ask you to open the bag of fertilizers and distribute them as though you are giving a cup of fertilizer to farmers. That is not what the instruction is. You have a copy of the letter. You can apprise Ghanaians what the instructions were. If you read the instructions that were given, I'm sure that the right thing shall be done. Mr. Speaker, the grant the fertilizers to the vulnerable farmers is totally different from the fertilizers that we are delivering to the dry spell farmers. That we just started moving those fertilizers into the regions. And we have asked all stakeholders, including members of parliament, to ensure for accountability and transparency that those farmers are registered on the Ghana Agriculture and Agribusiness platform, because that is the only way a farmer can be identified and given support. And that is why we have invited members of parliament, district chief executives, and community leaders to help register the farmers so that we can account properly to Parliament, we can account to the Ghanaian people where the resources of state is going to. So it's transparent. If you so happen, and I've had several members of Parliament who've had their fertilizers in a way withheld by DCs, and I've received calls. I don't want to mention names. If I'm dead, I will. That I have personally called these DCEs to release the fertilizers to my colleague members of Parliament who are having challenges getting the fertilizers. In fact, I have had calls to, on one occasion, call the leader of the minority about the situation. So there's total transparency in how we are delivering government resources to the Ghanaian people. We encourage all farmers through their leadership, through their leaders, to help the farmers register so that we can give the farmers, nobody anywhere can receive inputs from the Ministry of Agriculture without being properly registered, so that we can come and account to the Ghanaian people. So it is important that we set out the confusion. I'm going to come back in any statement, in whatever form, to give proper accounts to the Ghanaian people. How we procured inputs for distribution for the dry spell. We went through the processes. Mr. Speaker, with the permission of the right question, I'll come here to the floor and answer to the Ghanaian people the level of transparency with which we are implementing this government program. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.